The story begins with a girl who rushes home to play her favorite video game when suddenly Truck-kun appears and she gets run over. She finds herself in the body of a princess, immediately collapsing on the floor as the servants panic, scrambling to find help, and we learn she has been reincarnated into the game as the evil Princess Pride, who serves as the final boss. Her character's role is to cause the downfall of the country in 10 years' time, committing atrocities until the protagonist puts an end to her reign of terror. As she lies on her bed, her father, the prince consort Albert, enters the room, checking up on her, telling her that her mother is worried about her. Her mother is named Rosa, and she serves as the most powerful leader in her country. Pride hardly ever meets her because she is occupied with her duties as the queen, but she knows that there is another reason. She asks Albert about her younger sister, knowing her sister is the protagonist named Tiara. He wonders how she found out about this, and he suspects that she has the power of precognition, which is the same power that Rosa has. Because of this, he starts seeing her as the genuine crown princess, but Pride knows that this is not how the scene is supposed to go. Albert tells her to get some rest as he leaves the room, and Pride remembers that the people in the kingdom can be born with special abilities. The power of precognition is one of the most valuable abilities, and it is fit for a monarch, so those who possess that ability are chosen to succeed the throne. Even in the game, her character displays that ability by correctly guessing that she has a sister, making her a worthy successor to the throne. However, Pride knows that her situation is different, because she knows that, as the game's final boss, she'll be convicted and die in the end. She knows there is a bad ending where either Tiara or her love interest dies, but she doesn't want to force this ending, because she knows that Tiara and her love interest are good people, while her character is pure evil. At that moment, she remembers something, and she quickly gets off her bed, asking the maids about her father. The maids tell her that he left to report to the queen, and she opens the window, calling out to Albert as she hops on the window ledge. The maids try to stop her, but she tells them not to interfere. Pride tells Albert not to ride the carriage, saying it has a broken wheel which will cause an accident, and there is suddenly a strong gust of wind, which causes her to fall, but a servant grabs onto her, saving her in the nick of time. The maids immediately bow their heads as they beg for forgiveness, and this makes Pride remember that her character punished the maids, and even gave them the death penalty. She cries thinking about this, as she apologizes to the maids, causing them to be shocked. Albert enters the room, asking her if the servants did something to her, but she says she's the one at fault, telling him not to punish the servants. Later that day, Albert tells her that she will meet Tiara on her 6th birthday, and he needs to adopt a younger brother to act as an assistant. The next day, as she walks around the castle, the servants talk about how she has changed as a person, as she thinks about denying everything because she is nothing like the Pride in the game. She thinks about how both of her parents are still alive, because in the game, they are supposed to be dead at that point in the story, so she thinks she can change the story in that world. Albert introduces her to her younger brother-in-law named Stale, who is one of the love interests in the game, saying he will act as her assistant. Stale has a teleportation ability, and he's wearing handcuffs to suppress this, because he tried to run away multiple times. Albert tells her that Stale will enter a contract of subordination with her tomorrow, so that the handcuffs will no longer be necessary. Pride remembers how her character tricked Stale into signing a contract of fealty instead of a contract of subordination, and this gave her absolute control over Stale, making him her slave. She worries they are just following the storyline, wondering if she can really change the story. That evening, she goes to Stale's room, asking him if he wants to see his mother. Stale becomes emotional, as Pride shows him the key to his handcuffs, which she secretly took from Albert's desk. Pride is about to remove his handcuffs, but Stale tells her that he and his mother would receive punishment if he escapes from the castle. Stale explains that after the official notice, he only had 2 weeks to stay with his mother before he was sent to the castle, and he was crying on the day they parted, but he was able to give her a proper goodbye. He is afraid that another kid would replace him if he escapes, saying he doesn't want anyone to suffer the same fate as him, so he'll just forget about his mother and serve her. Pride thinks that Stale is a good boy, and she remembers how her character manipulated him into killing his own mother, so she becomes emotional, telling him to sleep well as she walks away. The following day, they sign the contract, and Stale's handcuffs are removed, as Albert welcomes him to the family. Stale tells Pride that he is looking forward to being at her side, saying he will protect her as he addresses her as the princess. Pride tells him not to be so formal since they are family now, but her father's assistant, Chancellor Gilbert, goes to them, advising Stale to address her formally in front of others, as he tells Pride that she has become a fine vessel for a queen, knowing about her precognition ability. Pride takes Stale around the house, showing him the library, and she tells him to use it whenever he wishes. She later sees him holding onto some books, but he suddenly falls to the ground as he starts breathing heavily. Stale catches a cold, and he starts crying as he remembers his mother. Pride realizes that he's been through a lot, and he even worked to study the way of life in the castle. She thinks about how cruel her character was to Stale, so she starts crying. Stale asks her what's wrong, and Pride hugs onto him as she apologizes for not being able to help him because she wants him to be with his mother. She promises not to hurt him, wanting to make everyone smile, and she tells Stale to kill her if she becomes a deplorable queen. Pride ends up sleeping in his room as Stale thinks about protecting her. We see a scene in the game where Stale tried to kill Pride after he was forced to kill his mother. Pride calls him a fool, saying he can't kill her because he signed the contract of fealty. Stale asks her what his mother did to deserve this, but Pride says she did nothing and she only wanted to see him kill his own mother for fun. Stale wants to die, but Pride gives him an order, telling him he can't take his own life. He falls to his knees as Pride laughs at him, and he becomes determined to have his revenge. Back in their world, Stale wakes up, saying he had a dream, but he can't remember what it was. As he prepares for his next lecture, he realizes that he brought Pride's handkerchief with him. He remembers the moment he shared with her, and he recalls when his mother received the official notice. His mother cried after receiving it, saying she doesn't need the money, as she begged them not to take Stale. Before they parted ways, his mother displayed an expression which is similar to what he saw from Pride. Stale reveals that he heard about Pride's naive attitude, so he thought about manipulating her, knowing she would become queen. With this plan in mind, he did everything he could to become the ideal assistant and an exemplary regent, thinking he can change the country's rules if he came into her favor. But he remembers how Pride told him to kill her if she becomes a deplorable queen, wondering what she's so afraid of. At that moment, Pride goes to him, telling him to go with her because she wants to give him something. She takes Stale to Albert, who tells him he made an exception for him as he gives Stale an envelope. He opens it, and it is revealed to be a letter from his mother, who is happy that she can now exchange letters with him, wishing him well. Stale bursts into tears as Albert tells him that this was done at Pride's request. He goes on to reveal that his mother will receive a fixed amount every month, and they will accept one letter from his mother each month, but he can only send one letter each year. Pride hugs him, telling him they all love him, and he thinks about why Pride is so afraid of becoming a deplorable queen, since she is such a good person. He becomes determined to protect her with his life, wanting to repay her kindness. Later, as Stale thinks about what he should write in his letter, he overhears people talking about Pride's selfishness, so he looks out the window, but he can't see or hear them well. He uses his teleportation ability, hiding behind the bush, as he continues to eavesdrop. Stale sees Chancellor Gilbert with a group of men, and they start talking about him, saying he is a commoner who must feel ashamed because Pride is looking down on him. Stale knows this is a lie, and Gilbert appears to be spreading this to make them question Pride's eligibility to succeed the throne, so he returns to his room, planning to report him, but he thinks that they won't believe him as he is now. He knows that he will need more than just courage, thinking he needs to be craftier than anyone else, to win even more trust than Gilbert has. He works on getting better, wanting to have an outer appearance that will be liked by the entire nation, so that he will be able to protect Pride from the filthy adults. Stale is now loyal to her, and he will not allow anyone but Pride to become queen. Meanwhile, Rosa tells Tiara that she will meet Pride and Stale at her birthday celebration tomorrow, and she becomes nervous because she doesn't know if they will like her. The next day, the nobles gather for Tiara's birthday celebration, clapping their hands as Pride and Stale make their entrance. Stale introduces himself to Rosa, saying it's an honor to be a part of their family, as he promises to assist Pride as the next regent, gaining the admiration of the nobles. Albert and Tiara also make their entrance, and Pride remembers how Tiara is supposed to join her love interests to take her character out, serving as the only light for the country during her character's rule. The nobles think she looks just like Rosa, and at that moment, Pride starts to feel jealous because the nobles never said that about her. She agrees with them, finding Tiara cute, but despite feeling jealous, she is determined not to torment her. Albert introduces Tiara to her siblings, and Pride looks forward to getting to know her. Tiara is pleased to meet her, calling her big sister, and Pride finds her endearing, which is expected from the likable protagonist of the game. Stale also introduces himself, saying it's an honor to become her older brother, but Pride notices that he isn't addressing her as the princess. He wants to work with her to support Pride, and Tiara agrees to this. The nobles are happy to see this, as Pride realizes that Stale made his move to let the entire country know that she is the future queen. The siblings join hands, and Pride declares that they will protect the country and its people, making the nobles cheer for her as they clap their hands. Rosa tells Pride not to forget this moment, saying they have high expectations from her. Rosa informs everyone that Pride's precognition ability has blossomed, so she recognizes her as the next in line to the throne. After that, Gilbert goes to them, telling them they stole everyone's hearts. He compliments Tiara's appearance, saying it's a shame she didn't gain the precognition ability, because she could have been the future queen instead, but Stale interrupts him, asking him what he means. Gilbert admits he was being rude, saying Stale has changed, since he now looks like he's from the royal family. He wants to talk to Stale about his commoner background, but Stale tells him that he was able to come this far because of Pride, and he wants to continue serving her with Tiara, as he displays a passive-aggressive behavior. Gilbert asks Pride what she thinks about the politics of that country, asking her about the other people with the same ability, but Albert suddenly hits his head and drags him away. Pride thinks that Stale resembles Gilbert, which is a shock to him, and he falls into despair because he doesn't like Gilbert. Rosa and Albert talk about Pride, thinking she's changed a lot after she awakened her abilities. Rosa reveals that she had bad premonitions about Pride, but she can no longer see them happening because of the changes to her. Rosa notes that only a month has passed since Stale joined the family, but she can't believe he is willing to go so far for Pride. The commander named Roderick approaches Pride, telling her he was deeply moved by her words, as he congratulates her for being recognized as the next in line to the throne. He wants her to meet his son in the future, and Pride looks forward to meeting him. Rosa says that the future has somehow changed, but Albert tells her not to worry, because Pride will make a great queen. After the event, we see Pride outside, staring at the sky, as she swears that in 10 years, she will do everything in her power to serve the country and its people. We see Stale training in the garden, but he gets embarrassed when he hears he will be marrying Pride. We learn it's common for adopted siblings to get married, but Stale ends up losing focus. The girls rush over to him, and Tiara treats his wounds. We learn that in the game, Stale actually develops feelings for her, so Pride wonders if that will also happen. She thinks about how her world has already changed so much, but she decides to test something to make sure. She fights against the instructor, and she manages to easily defeat him. We learn this is the first time she has ever picked up a sword, able to master self-defense by just watching, and she realizes she has the cheat abilities that make her the final boss. Stale can't believe she is so strong, thinking he won't be needed. But Pride tells him not to be discouraged, saying she is sure that he will one day become stronger than her. Stale gets back to his training, but after this test, Pride thinks her destiny is still to progress through the story of the game, but hopes to be able to spend her days with Stale and Tiara. Pride goes to observe the Royal Knights. She is greeted by the Vice Captain Clark, but Pride wonders why the captain isn't around. So she's told that the captain was called away for a joint military exercise with the neighboring country. Stale thinks it's rude for the captain not to be around for Pride's first observation, but Pride is understanding, saying she is sure that the Knights will be outstanding even when the captain is away. Pride watches over the Knights as they train, and she is thoroughly impressed by their skills, but she thinks about how her character used them all to do her bidding in the game. At that moment, a knight comes rushing over, informing Clark that the captain's group was attacked on their way to the neighboring country. Clark thinks they need to get Pride to safety first, but she insists on overseeing the operation. They head to the conference room, where we see the Captain Roderick reporting the situation. Stale notes that they are able to communicate, thanks to the ability of one of the knights. We see that Roderick is surrounded, but he notes there haven't been any casualties yet. Clark tells him they have sent reinforcements, but they are still 30 minutes away. Roderick isn't sure they can hold up that long, because they are already running low on ammunition. However, Pride has a plan. She reveals that Stale can teleport anything around his body weight as long as he has the coordinates, so she tells them to prepare supplies they can send. We see Stale sending over the supplies, and Roderick's men manage to regain their morale. The captain can't believe Stale kept such an ability hidden this whole time, and one of the knights suggests he could drop bombs on their enemies, but Roderick immediately reprimands him, calling him disrespectful. Stale says he doesn't mind if Pride told him to do it, but she tells him to never do something like that. Clark apologizes for his man, and Pride reminds them to keep Stale's ability a secret, not wanting Stale to be used for war, but for him to use his ability for himself, and to protect the things that he wants. A soldier reports that the reinforcements are 10 minutes away. Clark orders for half of them to help Roderick, while the other half apprehends the enemy on the cliff top. Roderick warns them to watch their footing, because the ground in the area is unstable. However, this makes Pride remember something from the game, as she suddenly warns them not to go up to the cliff top, saying she got a premonition that it would crumble. She uses her authority as the crown princess, ordering them all to retreat. The men rush off to send word, but we learn that Roderick is actually stuck near the cliff, because his leg got caught by a falling boulder. He tries to cut off his own leg, but he fails, because he actually has a slash nullification ability, which makes him immune to taking damage from swords. Roderick thinks it's the end for him, but his son suddenly appears, saying he's a terrible father, and telling him to survive for his mother's sake. Roderick gets surrounded by the enemy, and he prepares to go down with a fight. Pride thinks there's nothing she can do, but she notices a certain man among the enemies. The men rush at him, and he fights them off, but they realize that guns work on him, so they start to shoot at him. His son falls to his knees, begging someone to save him, but Pride tells him not to worry, saying she will protect everyone in her country. She tells Stale to teleport her to the battlefield, but he thinks it's too dangerous. She tells him to believe in her, saying she'll be okay, and he teleports her away. The enemy is about to finish Roderick off, but they suddenly get shot at, as Pride makes her entrance. She jumps down the cliff, telling them to prepare themselves, but Roderick tells her to get away. Pride claims he is one of her citizens, saying it's her duty to protect him, as she rushes at the enemy. She starts taking them out, and Roderick can't believe she is really just an 11-year-old girl. 3 men charge at her, but she jumps over their attack, taking them all out. The men try to retreat, but she gets hold of a gun, shooting them up, and they think she's some kind of monster. The cliff starts to crumble, but Pride catches the man she saw earlier. She tells Roderick to grab onto the man, saying they'll all die if he doesn't use his ability, and the cliff is about to crush them. We see a scene from the game, where Roderick's son watches on as his father is killed. Clark orders the knights to look for survivors, as he mourns Roderick's death, but Pride mocks the fallen captain, saying his death was pathetic. Clark tells her that Roderick sacrificed his life to help the others escape, but Pride thinks it doesn't matter, because they still died in the end. She isn't bothered by the casualties, saying she can always recruit new knights, and she appoints Clark as the new captain. Roderick's son knows that Pride has foreseen the tragedy, but she just allowed everyone to die, so he becomes angry, thinking about getting revenge for his father. He knows that he won't be able to do anything as he is now, so he thinks about becoming a knight just like his father, and he cuts his hair, determined to bring Pride to justice. Back in their world, the cliff falls on Pride and Roderick, and everyone starts to fear the worst, but a strange rock formation catches their attention. The formation crumbles as the other knights arrive, and they both make it out alive. The knights are overjoyed to see that their captain has survived, as Pride orders them to put their enemy in custody before attending to Roderick's injuries. The knights wonder who she is, so Roderick informs them that she is the princess, and everyone is shocked to hear this. In the conference room, they receive a report stating that there are 0 casualties, and this makes everyone happy, but Stale realizes that he just sent Pride to the battlefield, unable to do anything to protect her. Roderick wants Pride to return to the castle immediately, informing her that the vanguard has arrived to escort her back. Roderick tells her that there are plenty of things he would like to discuss with her, so he wants her to schedule a meeting. They return to the castle, and Pride has a meeting with the knights. She tells the knights to speak their minds, as she thanks them for keeping her involvement a secret. Roderick wonders how she found out that their enemy is a special ability user, and she claims that it's because of her precognition ability, but it was really because of her game knowledge. Roderick asks her why she joined the fight alone, saying she should have alerted the other knights before making a move. Pride explains that they wouldn't make it in time, and she tells them that because of the limitations of Stale's ability, she was the only one who could rush to the scene. Roderick becomes upset, saying she shouldn't have entered the battlefield even if no one could have saved him. He tells her that she should have just informed the knights and left everything to them, but she tells him about what could have happened if she hadn't interfered. Roderick interrupts her, reminding her that they are knights, so they will gladly give their lives for the country. He tells Pride that her actions almost disgraced the way of the knights, and she could have brought despair upon all of their countrymen if she died. She realizes that he has a good point, knowing he was seeking an honorable death, but she thinks about Roderick's son, knowing he would have been sad if his father died. Roderick goes on to lecture her about the value of her life, saying she is far more valuable than they are, so she shouldn't risk her life for them. Pride demands silence, admitting that he speaks the truth, because her actions caused some trouble, but she tells Roderick that he wasn't the only one he rescued, saying she also saved the knights who will soon be under his leadership. She states that those knights will save more people in the future, because it's their duty to protect the people directly. She lectures the knights about the value of their lives, saying many people will die if there is no knight to protect them, so she implores them to forget about dying an honorable death, and think about saving their countrymen instead. Pride tells Roderick that he doesn't understand the value of his life, telling him about the people around him who devote their hearts to him, so even if he was just a mere soldier, she would have done the same thing. Pride wants to save people whenever she can, as she reminds them about her position as the first princess, telling them that she lives for the sake of the people, so she will not allow any needless death. However, Pride knows that her actions have caused the knights some trouble, so she sincerely apologizes for this. Clark speaks up, saying he doesn't approve of the royal family getting involved in the incident, but he thanks her for saving the knights, and he bows before her as he thanks her for saving Roderick, knowing he would have died without her help. The other knights join Clark, thanking Pride for saving their captain, and Roderick's son walks closer, thanking her for saving his father. The boy reveals that he is a special ability user, but he thinks his ability doesn't do much, so he gave up on becoming a knight. However, when he saw his father's life on the line, he regretted not being able to do anything, so he wants to train harder, and he starts crying as he asks Pride if he can be a knight just like his father. Pride tells him that he can do it, saying he has her support, because he has the kindness to weep for his family and the desire to get stronger. She wants him to protect everyone after he becomes a knight, and he holds onto her hands, as he promises to protect her with his life. Pride asks for his name, and he reveals that his name is Arthur Beresford. She is surprised to hear this, as she realizes that the boy is actually a love interest in the game. She remembers that Arthur is the captain of the knights, and he is the only one who has the sword skills to overpower her character. Pride tells Arthur that she has foreseen his future, saying he is sure to become an honorable knight, but she remembers how evil her character is, so she orders him to kill her if she becomes an enemy of the country. Roderick suddenly prostrates himself, bursting into tears as he thanks Pride for saving his life. He admits that he is overjoyed to see everyone again, and he is happy to hear his son declare that he wants to become a knight, saying he is glad to be alive. Pride is also happy that he survived, but Arthur thinks about what she just said, wondering why she said that. He wants to protect her even if the whole world becomes her enemy, determined to make sure that she doesn't go down the wrong path. Arthur intends to cut down the people who stand in her way, and even if she starts to fall apart, he will do everything in his power to save her. We see that when Arthur was a child, he wanted to become a knight just like his father, but when he discovered his ability, which he uses to tend to his crops, and his parents are excited to learn he is also an ability user, he is pitied by other people, because his ability was no good for being a knight. No matter how hard he tried to train his ability, it never changed, so he started thinking about being a farmer instead. But after meeting Pride, he has become determined to become a knight. He resumes his training with his father, and he asks to learn more about Pride. He goes in for the kill, but he ends up getting pushed away. However, Roderick is impressed by his technique, thinking he is even more talented than himself. His wife arrives, wondering what they are doing, and she is surprised to learn Arthur is trying to become a knight, but Roderick quickly runs off, saying he has business to attend to, leaving his sword behind. Pride wonders how Arthur is doing, and we see that in the game, Roderick died at the cliff, causing Arthur to curse Pride for throwing his father's life away so easily, and swearing to get revenge on her, but she's glad she was able to encourage him to become a knight. Pride visits the knights, telling Clark she has something to return to the captain. When the other knights hear that Pride is visiting, they all rush over to her, and she has become quite popular with them after the last mission. Roderick comes rushing over, and Pride notices he seems to have hurt his head. Clark points out they were drinking all night, and after training with Arthur in the morning, Roderick ended up having an accident. Pride is glad to hear Arthur already started his training, and Roderick tells her Arthur was asking about her. But at that moment, Arthur arrives, bringing Roderick his sword, and he gets embarrassed when he sees Pride. All the knights smile at him, but he prepares to leave. Clark knows he has something he wants to say to Pride, but Arthur says he will tell her after he becomes a knight. Before he can go, Stale invites him to join in on his training, saying he's in need of a training partner, and Arthur agrees. Stale shows him to their training room, but as Stale talks to him, he finds his smile suspicious, wondering what he is planning. Stale says there's no need to be formal with him, telling him to just think of him as a friend. They start their training, and Stale is surprised by Arthur's skill, wondering if he really took a break from his training, but Arthur claims he hasn't touched a sword in years. Stale tells him he should try out for the knights, which is a surprise for Arthur because he thinks he is just a beginner. He thinks it would take him at least 3 years to prepare, but Stale thinks he is ready, and he offers to support him in any way. Arthur wonders why he is trying so hard to make him a knight, and Stale says it's so that he can protect Pride. Even though Pride is strong, he worries she will continue to be reckless in the future. He is training for the purpose of protecting her, but he knows he isn't enough. He recognizes how strong Arthur will become, so he wants him to be the one to protect her. Arthur finds it strange, thinking he is just a noob, but as he thinks of Pride, he wants to be able to protect her. He wonders why Stale is trying so hard for Pride's sake, and Stale thinks they are similar, saying he owes everything to her, so he made a vow to live for her sake. He finds it hard to trust the people around them, but after seeing Arthur swear to protect her with his life, he started to believe in him. He wants to become Pride's shield, and he tells Arthur to become her sword. Arthur accepts his explanation, agreeing to work together for Pride's sake. They start to get along, and Arthur tells him his smile creeped him out. Stale is surprised hearing this, and Arthur says it was the reason he found him suspicious. They start messing around, and Stale is glad to have met him. We see Pride reading about the laws of the country, as she recalls that her character used it to commit atrocities, so she wants to make sure that she doesn't go down the same path. Pride appears at the throne room, where Gilbert tells her that the man she captured is involved in the disappearance of knights from an allied kingdom. He reveals that the man set up an ambush after extracting information from the knights held in captivity. Rosa knows that Pride has been reading about the laws of the country, so she wants her to pass judgment as the future queen. The criminal enters the room, and Pride remembers that his name is Val, knowing that her character hired him to fight Tiara in the game. We learn that the knights held in captivity are still alive, so they're going to need Val's guidance to find them, and Rosa wants Pride to mention what she is considering as she delivers judgment. Pride says that Val has committed a serious crime, and she thinks that he deserves to be executed, but she knows that they're going to need him to find the captive knights, so she considers applying a fealty contract. She orders the knights to remove his gag, as she approaches him, asking him how he would like to be punished, as she explains that he will be deprived of his free will after he enters the fealty contract, so he could end up suffering a fate worse than death. But Val tells her that he doesn't want to die, so she ultimately decides to release him after he serves the contract. Rosa tells Pride to carry out the contract, and she signs it, but she worries she's going down the same path as the game and starting to become evil. Val also signs the contract, allowing it to take effect, as Pride gives him his orders, forcing him to serve the royal family and live an honest life free from violence. After some time, Stale reveals that the knights have been rescued, so Pride approaches Val, telling him to speak his mind. He calls her a monster, making Stale upset, but she decides to release him anyways, saying she will leave him with 2 orders to live by. The first order is to protect Tiara in case of emergency, and everyone is surprised to hear this, but Pride says that it's a matter of the highest priority, so Val can disobey her for Tiara's sake. The second order is to return to her in case he needs help, and she sets him free, ordering him to leave the castle. His legs start moving against his will, and as he starts walking, he asks her why she's doing this. Pride tells him that it might just be based on an unfounded fear, and the guards escort him away. Stale thinks she's being too lenient, saying Val deserves a harsh punishment, but Pride sees him as one of her subjects, so she gave him another chance, knowing he wants to live. Tiara wonders if she's being a hindrance, because Pride asked Val to protect her, thinking she must be weak, but Pride tells her that she loves her, saying she just wants to protect what's important to her. She reveals that she also loves Stale, telling him that she wants to be his older sister until the very end. We learn that Pride is happy to be with them, and she wants them to remember that she loves them, even if something bad happens in the future. It's almost time for the knighthood exam, and they meet up with Arthur, as Pride reveals that they will be watching him train every day, thinking it will encourage him to train harder. Stale and Arthur have a sparring match, and after a few days, we see the boys continuing their training, while the sisters pick flowers. The sisters give the boys flowers, as Tiara reveals that Pride chose the flowers for them. She reveals that the flowers have meaning, explaining that Stale's flowers express intelligence, success, and worthiness, while Arthur's flowers represent heroism, strength, and beauty. She puts flowers on their heads, saying it looks good on them, but it becomes time for the knighthood exam, so Arthur bids them farewell and makes his way outside. After 2 years, we see Arthur walking to the throne, and he kneels before Pride, who tells him that he is now a knight. After the ceremony, Stale asks Arthur about Gilbert, who seemed to be pestering him during the event, but he reveals that they were just talking about an uncommon special ability. Arthur gives Stale a box, which contains glasses, and he tries it on, as the sisters tell him that he looks great. Gilbert pesters Pride about his proposal, when Albert suddenly stops him and takes him away. She reveals that he was proposing a special ability registration law, where the people will be required to report their ability, but she doesn't like it, because she thinks that it violates human rights. Stale tells her to be careful around Gilbert, and she laughs, as she recalls that the two of them were able to get along in the game. But this makes Pride confused, because she thought that Gilbert wasn't a character in the game. We learn that Stale can now teleport more than just his weight, and she orders him to take them to Gilbert's location. Stale teleports them to the entrance of a room, where they hear Gilbert arguing with Albert, because his wishes have not been granted. He reveals that he isn't happy, because they quickly deal with the matters that involve Pride, but even after 7 years, they still haven't given him what was promised. Albert tells him that he understands his struggles, but Gilbert becomes upset, saying Albert will never understand what he's going through, because his fiancée Maria is dying, so he needs someone with the special ability to cure her illness. We see a scene from the game, where Gilbert asks Pride what she has done to him. She tells him that he is stuck as an old man, because he told her to enact a law, which gives her absolute control over the rare special abilities in the world. We learn that he did it because he thought that the law would help save Maria, but he starts crying, knowing that it's all his fault. We return to the present, and Pride finally remembers who he is. Gilbert is revealed to be a secret character in the game, but Pride didn't recognize him, because his appearance is different. We learn that his fiancée has an incurable disease, so he asked for her character's help, and she promised to enact a law in exchange for 5 years of labor. But the day after the law was enacted, Maria died, and her character forced the special ability users into subordination or death. Feeling guilty for what happened, Gilbert could no longer look like a young adult, and he was only able to switch between an old man and a boy. Pride thinks that Maria will die after a few weeks, because the law was passed on that day, and it takes weeks for a law to be enacted. They see Albert ordering the guards to search the castle, so Pride approaches him, asking him about the commotion. He reveals that Gilbert is missing, and they go to a room, where Stale explains Gilbert's situation to Tiara, while Pride remembers that her character decides on execution in war, without listening to the opinion of others. This makes her realize that her character could have enacted the law immediately after it was passed, which means this could be the day that Maria dies, so she and Stale quickly dress up. We see Gilbert with a group of thugs, promising to pay them if they can find someone who can cure illness, but the men laugh, thinking the ability doesn't exist. He is about to walk away, but the thugs attack him, so he fights back, knocking them down. However, one of them grabs onto him, and he is about to get stabbed, when Stale and Pride suddenly arrive, helping him deal with the thugs. Pride tells Gilbert that she had a premonition, saying Maria is about to die. In a flashback, we learn that Gilbert was born as a commoner, and after his parents died, he had to resort to underhanded methods just to make ends meet. He meets Maria as she escapes her room, and we learn that her health is declining, so she was confined to her room. She tells him that he is the first person she has ever met, asking him to take her to a place where she can see more people. Gilbert grants her wish, allowing them to view the city from a distance. Maria tells him that it's the most beautiful thing she has ever seen, and he offers to take her there whenever she wants. She accepts his offer, and since then, he started to change his life, landing a decent job, because she has given him a reason to live. One evening, Maria reveals that she has a fiancé, so he starts crying, but she tells him that she loves him, and she kisses him. She wants him to keep seeing her until she turns 16, because that's when she's going to get married. Gilbert awakens his ability Eternal Youth, which allows him to manipulate his own lifespan, and he tells Maria that he won't be seeing her for a while, but he promises to return to her. He focuses on his studies, and he is appointed as Albert's advisor, making him the nation's chancellor. Gilbert returns to Maria, asking her to marry him, and she hugs him as she accepts his proposal. He is finally enjoying his life at the palace, but one day, Maria collapses due to her illness. She tells him to live a good life if she dies, but he promises to cure her, saying he will do whatever it takes. Back in the present, Stale threatens Gilbert, knowing he has committed crimes to save Maria, but Pride stops him, saying Gilbert is still her subject. Pride and Stale return to the palace, where Gilbert calls out to Pride, imploring her to help him. They decide to join him, as Pride orders Stale to teleport her to Arthur and go with Gilbert to Maria's room. Pride approaches Arthur, and she tells him that she wants to save someone, but she is certain that his life will change if he decides to help her. Arthur tells her that it's okay, because she has already changed his life, saying he is willing to die for her. Stale joins them, as Pride wonders why he looks like a grown man, but he tells her that there's no time to explain, and he takes them to Maria, who is about to die. Pride orders Arthur to lay his hands on Maria, revealing that he has the ability to heal all of creation. Upon laying his hands on her, a bright light appears, and her condition instantly improves. She thanks Arthur for saving her, as Pride notes that he wasn't supposed to know about his ability yet, knowing she has changed the story again. She thanks Stale for helping her, wondering why his body has changed, so he explains that Gilbert transformed him into an adult to help him move faster. Gilbert bows to her as he expresses his gratitude, and he admits that he has committed unforgivable acts in his quest to save Maria, saying he is ready to take any punishment that she has for him. Pride says that she can't excuse this, but she just tells him to inform her parents about his crimes, ordering the maids to forget everything they witness. She orders him to make an oath that he will work for the people and continue serving as the chancellor of the country until he dies. He starts crying, as Pride recalls that Gilbert promised Tiara that he will protect the people at the end of the game. Gilbert makes the oath, and he pledges allegiance to her, saying he will never forget the kindness that she displayed. That evening, Arthur reveals that the knights now know about his abilities, and Stale wonders if he still wants to be a knight, because his ability has opened more lucrative opportunities for him, but he tells Stale that he wants to keep his position. They start talking about Pride, thinking she is unfair because she let him off so easily. Stale admits that he's upset, because he really hates Gilbert, saying he doesn't deserve his position. Stale starts to think that he wasn't able to protect Pride, seeing Gilbert as a threat, and he starts crying, but Arthur tells him that he's doing a good job. Arthur reveals that he used to hear plenty of bad rumors about Pride, but they all disappeared when Stale started supporting her. He knows that Stale won't be able to protect her from everything, so he offers to help accomplish this task. He mentions how Stale is more mature than him despite being at a younger age, revealing that he used to cry a lot. Stale promises not to cry for 5 years, and Arthur says that he will do the same because he wants to look strong in front of them. During a royal banquet, Stale reveals that he despises Gilbert, but Tiara thinks that he's just jealous. Gilbert knows that Stale doesn't like him, so he takes this as a challenge, and he formally announces that he will be marrying Maria. At the arena, the knights are fighting for the position of Imperial Guard, and Arthur wipes the floor with everyone, allowing him to earn the title. While riding the carriage, they talk about how fierce the competition was, because only Roderick and Clark didn't participate, and everyone fought to the best of their abilities. Pride thinks about giving the knights a raise when the carriage suddenly stops because there is a man blocking their path. She realizes that it's Val, so she rushes over to check up on him. Later that day, Val regains consciousness, and Pride tells him that he has been carried to the castle. He is about to disrespect her, but the contract of fealty stops him, making him fall to his knees. Pride wonders what happened to him, and he reveals that the contract compelled him to return to her. She recalls that she ordered him to return if he needs help, so she asks him what he needs from her. He refuses to tell her about it, but the contract forces him to speak the truth, so he tells her to help the kids, Kemet and Sefik. Val reveals that they were taken by human traffickers, and Pride recalls that he can't use violence, so he can't save the kids. She places him under house arrest, so he calls her a monster, but she says that she will help him because human trafficking is illegal and it's her duty to help those in need. After some time, when they visit Val in his room, where they realize that he has made a mess, Pride gives him his meal, but he takes the knife, instantly throwing it toward Pride, which makes everyone panic, but we see he was just aiming at a spider. Pride orders him to go to bed after the meal, saying he needs to be in good condition to save the kids, but he says that he doesn't need their help, claiming the kids aren't important to him. Tiara wonders why he wants to save the kids, and he claims that they help him live a comfortable life, so Pride speculates that he is using the kids to do his bidding. Val tells them to leave him alone, and Pride hugs Tiara, knowing she is afraid. Pride knows that Tiara is sensitive to people's sorrows, thinking there must be a reason why she talked to Val. Pride tells the others to look after Tiara, while she stays in the room for a bit longer, saying she will be fine because she is Val's master. Pride tells Val they will save the kids in the morning, but he insists that he doesn't need help. She asks him about the kids, so he reveals that they've been following him around wherever he goes, because they think that he will keep them safe. She asks him what they were like, and he reveals that they are both special ability users. Val reveals that Kemet has no purpose of his own, so he keeps following other people, and Sefik is always looking after him. Even though they aren't related by blood, she acts like his big sister. Val knows that she has the ability to blast people away with water, but he doesn't know what kind of ability Kemet has. He says that it was Sefik's idea to follow him, and that he taught the kids about money, but he starts pounding the wall, saying he's starting to feel sick again. Pride asks him about what's precious to him, and he claims that he just values money in his life, but Pride digs deeper, wondering if he has anyone precious in his life. Val claims that he doesn't care about anyone, but she asks him how he would feel if Kemet and Sefik died. Val becomes upset, feeling pain in his heart, but he wonders why his thoughts are causing him to feel this way, and he starts punching the floor, saying he can't stop thinking about the kids. He blames Pride for everything, saying she should have just killed him so that he wouldn't experience this pain. Val bursts into tears, and he is confused about what's happening, so Pride concludes that he doesn't understand his emotions. She hugs him, ordering him not to push her away, as she explains that his suffering is a part of his punishment. She teaches him about his emotions, saying he feels sick because he is worried about the kids, and he is crying because they are like a family to him. Val meets up with the human traffickers, but they refuse to release Kemet and Sefik because they want 5 kids in exchange, but he's only brought 4. He says that he's the 5th one, but they think he isn't worth it, so he shows them his ability, making them change their minds. Val tells them to release Kemet and Sefik, but they restrain him instead, saying they will never let go of their merchandise. Val and the kids are thrown inside a carriage, and we learn that the 4 kids are actually Pride and the others. It is revealed that before they met up with the human traffickers, they came up with a plan to infiltrate the enemy base so that the knights can eliminate the human traffickers after they rescue the prisoners. Arthur worries that their plan won't work because the public knows who they are, so Gilbert transforms them into kids, and they assume different identities. They arrive at the enemy base, and Stale removes his restraints. The enemies wonder why Stale is free, so they grab onto him, but they are instantly sent to a prison, where the knights start interrogating them, wanting to know about the location of their base. Stale rescues the other kids in the carriage, and we learn that the enemies have separated the special ability users from the ordinary kids. Arthur, Gilbert and Pride join the ordinary kids in a cell, where they hear a girl calling out to Val. Pride realizes they must be Kemet and Sefik, so they approach them, saying they are Val's friends, but she doesn't believe them, saying Val doesn't have friends. Sefik thinks that Val got caught, calling him an idiot because she knows that the human traffickers would never release their merchandise. She inquires about his location, so Gilbert reveals that Val went to the prison of special ability users to look for her, but the guard is bothered by the noise, telling them to shut up. Meanwhile, Val and Stale rescue the special ability users, but Stale wonders why they haven't found Kemet and Sefik. Val thinks that they must be hiding their abilities. Stale notices flashes from a distance, and Val thinks that it must be from a special cell. At that moment, a guard spots them, but Stale quickly teleports him away, saying the knights should be arriving soon. Val detonates a bomb, grabbing the attention of the other guards, and he uses his ability to trap them. Arthur thinks that the special ability users have been rescued, but Sefik is worried about Val, so she uses her ability, blasting the guard away. Stale enters the special cell, where he sees a boy lying on the ground. He removes the restraints as the boy wakes up, introducing himself as Powell. Stale tells him that he can now go home, preparing to teleport him away, when lightning suddenly comes out of his body, as he reveals that he doesn't want to go home, because he brings misery to everyone around him. Stale realizes that Powell's ability is out of control, but he walks forward, saying he is also a special ability user. He tells Powell about Pride, saying the country will change after she becomes queen, and he promises to help him find a place to belong. The lightning continues to injure him, but he is able to hold Powell, who disables his lightning, asking Stale why he's doing this. He explains that he understands what he is going through, and Powell starts crying as he is teleported away. Stale thinks about returning to Pride, but he collapses because of his injuries. Meanwhile, the knights arrive at the location as a knight named Alan notices Arthur, asking him what he's doing there. He hides Pride from the knights, ordering them to back him up while he charges at the enemy. Arthur runs away with her, but Alan catches up to him and he recognizes Pride, but Arthur claims that he is mistaken. The human traffickers catch Val and Stale, preparing to interrogate them, but Gilbert suddenly arrives, telling them that the knights have arrived, frightening the enemy leader. Gilbert proceeds to taunt him, but the boss shoots him in the arm. Seeing this, Arthur charges at them, targeting the leader, while Alan orders the knights to attack. Arthur slices through the enemies, but the leader has taken Val hostage, threatening to kill him, so Arthur stops fighting, and he ends up getting restrained. Gilbert returns Pride to her original form, and she sets Arthur free, slicing the chains with her sword. The leader tries to attack her, but she shatters the chains, causing him to panic. He tries to shoot her, but she easily slices through the bullets. She doesn't want to dirty her hands by killing him, so she throws her sword away, giving it to Alan, who delivers the finishing blow. It looks like it's finally over, but they suddenly hear a loud explosion as an airship starts bombing the area. They start running for the exit, but they receive a report that Kemet and Sefik are still inside. Val finds Sefik, but she tells him that Kemet is trapped, so he tries to save him using his ability, but he's not strong enough. The cave is about to collapse, but he still tries to save Kemet, and Alan orders 2 knights to help him, while the others evacuate the cave. They carry the kids away, leaving Pride and Arthur to help rescue Kemet. Val sees Kemet through an opening, but the cave is on the verge of collapsing, so the knights try to convince Val to leave, but he refuses, reminding them that he's a criminal, so they don't need to care about him. He tells Pride not to give him any orders, but she tells him to block them off, and he is grateful to her for this. Pride and Arthur leave the cave, and Sefik approaches them, asking them about Val and Kemet, but Arthur tells her they are still inside. Sefik is about to go back, but the knights stop her, so she uses her ability, launching water at them. Seeing this, Gilbert comes up with a theory, and Pride returns to Val, ordering him to remove the wall. Val wonders why she's back, but Pride tells him to grab Kemet's hand. He wonders what they're planning, knowing that he can't pull Kemet out of that hole, but after Kemet grabs his hand, Pride orders him to control the entire cave. Val thinks that he can't do it, but he suddenly feels an overwhelming power as the cave instantly transforms. He wonders how he did it, as the rubble disappears, allowing him to reunite with Kemet. We return to Gilbert, who thinks that Kemet's special ability could be to amplify the power of a user, because he remembers how strong Sefik was when she defeated the guards, but her ability was so much weaker after being separated from Kemet. Val finds this unbelievable, and he starts controlling the cave with his hand. He creates a platform, which starts moving on its own, and they make it out of the cave. Sefik is overjoyed to see Kemet, but we see a man watching them from the airship, which is revealed to be invisible. The man drops bombs from the ship, covering the area with explosions. Sefik is about to fall down a cliff, but she is saved by Val, and he falls down instead. He starts to wonder what has become of him, because he never imagined that he would risk his life for a kid. In a flashback, we learn that Val's mother abandoned him when he was 7 years old. The people treated him harshly, so he learned to fight back, and even killed people to survive. He joined a criminal group to make profit, but pride captured him, and she made him sign the fealty contract before setting him free. Val returns to his town, where he sees Kemet and Sefik, who are being attacked by the other kids, but they all run away after seeing him. Val ignores the duo, but they start following him anywhere he goes, thinking he will keep them safe. He tries to run away, as he remembers that he was involved in human trafficking, but the kids are still following him, so he tries to use force, but he can't, because the contract forbids him from using violence. Val knows that he can't do anything, so he decides to ignore them, but after a few months, he gets used to having them around, and he even starts to teach them. Sefik starts a business by selling water, and their relationship deepens, as they start looking after each other. But one day, the human traffickers capture the kids, and the leader assaults Val, ordering him to bring 5 kids in exchange for Kemet and Sefik. He tries to retaliate, as the contract of fealty stops him, but he remembers he can return to Pride for help. Back in the present, Val accepts his fate, happy that he was able to save the kids in the end, but Pride catches up to him, ordering him to grab her hand. She calls out to Stale, who immediately regains consciousness and teleports to their location, bringing them back to safety. Kemet and Sefik are crying, thinking Val has fallen to his death, but he appears behind them, and they are overjoyed to see he survived. The next day, Arthur warns Pride to be careful, because they still haven't caught the person responsible for the bombing. Val arrives with the kids, and he has helped Pride with a delivery. Pride is surprised that he was able to do it in one day, because it usually takes 5 days to complete the task, but Stale confirms that the letter is authentic. She thanks Val for a job well done, as she announces that he and the kids will become the royal family's exclusive carriers. Kemet and Sefik are happy to hear this, and Pride reveals they will be establishing a school in the country, promising the kids that they will be able to live better lives. She tells them that the school will be established if they decide to do their part as carriers, and Val promises to help her with this goal, accepting her as his master. Pride watches as Arthur fights Gilbert, but it looks like he doesn't stand a chance, and Gilbert tells Stale to join in, but Stale refuses because he still doesn't like him. Gilbert promises to teach them a technique if they can land a hit on him, an attack that can knock an opponent unconscious without causing harm. Stale is interested by this, so he joins the fight, telling Arthur that they will gang up on Gilbert. They proceed to attack him, but he dodges their attacks, and easily takes them down. Val arrives, wondering what's happening, and Tiara offers the kids cake. Sefik is interested, asking Val and Kemet to join her, so Val goes to take Kemet's hand, but he ends up grabbing onto Pride, making Stale and Arthur jealous. Val realizes the mistake, so he quickly walks away with Kemet, as Gilbert notes that his opponents are distracted. Before leaving, Tiara tells Pride to cheer for the boys, thinking they will be encouraged if she tells them how she feels. As the fight drags on, she notices that the boys are getting beat up, so she tells them to stand up. She says that Stale is smart and cool, and she is proud to have him as his brother, while Arthur is a spectacular knight, who is so strong that she thinks he can defeat anyone. She tells them to win, and Gilbert notices that they are now serious, so he concludes that Pride can bring out their inner strength. She continues to cheer them on, as they charge at him, managing to land a hit. After the fight, we see that the boys are exhausted, but Arthur is determined to get stronger, saying he wants to surpass Gilbert. He recalls that he wasn't able to do much during their fight with the human traffickers, thinking he hasn't changed at all, because he wasn't as helpful as Stale. But Stale reminds him how he used his sword to protect everyone, and this helps him realize that he has done his part. Pride tells them that they fought well, and she proceeds to wipe Arthur's face, saying she was captivated by his fighting skills. She thinks about how they have both become admirable people, and she is glad she was able to meet them. She reminds them that they must protect Tiara and the people no matter what, but they tell her that they will also protect her, and Pride is happy to hear this. Pride thinks about everything she has been through, but she knows that it's just the beginning, and that she could still end up as the final boss, so she resolves herself to continue to do everything that she can to protect everything that's important to her. Pride is about to turn 16, which is the legal age in this world, but she thinks she needs to prove she has what it takes to be queen, and she's worried something could go wrong at her birthday party. Gilbert promises to make sure everything goes smoothly, but he notices Stale's reaction and decides not to talk about the most important topic. After he leaves, Pride asks Stale what's wrong with him, so he explains that he was just thinking about something, and she thinks he's nervous that she might mess up during her party. Stale trains with Arthur, who easily defeats him, and wonders why he can't focus on their match. He explains that it's because Pride is about to turn 16, and her fiancé will be announced during her celebration, but Arthur tells him they always knew it would happen. Stale notes that he already made his peace with it, and is ready to support her all the way, but he's worried that she might end up with a man who doesn't deserve her. He reveals that he looked into her fiancé, and learned that he's a prince from the Anemone Kingdom, but he's also a notorious womanizer, so Arthur realizes she's about to get engaged to a playboy. The next day, we see Pride at her party, and Stale is glad that everything's going well, while the knights greet her with a happy birthday. She sees a man, and recognizes him as one of the two love interests in the game, so she realizes he's her fiancé. He suddenly approaches her, and introduces himself as Leon, the firstborn prince of the Anemone Kingdom. She recalls that in the game, he lost everything and had his heart broken by her character, but he suddenly kisses her hand, and tells her she's the most beautiful woman he's ever met. She becomes flustered hearing this, and thinks he's nothing like his character in the game, but he tells her they should head back, since something big is about to happen. Rosa announces that Leon is Pride's fiancé, and notes that their engagement will strengthen the alliance between their kingdoms, and he promises to love Pride with all his heart. After the party, Pride thinks the next 10 days will be important, since Leon will be staying at the castle for 3 days, then the following week, he'll return to live with her as her fiancé. We see a scene from the game, where Leon panics as Pride approaches him, and he tells her he loves her, but she laughs and reminds him they aren't married yet. She explains that he's the prince consort in name only, but reminds him that everyone hates him, and notes that his father told him never to return to the Anemone Kingdom. She thinks he'll lose everything if she breaks her engagement with him, and admits that she's jealous, since her sister has been visiting him recently. He tells her she's the only one he loves, and she promises not to let him go, since he's her cute little toy. Back in the present, Pride and Leon walk through the garden, as she thinks about how he has the skills needed to be king. But everyone in the Anemone Kingdom doesn't like him, since he's a notorious playboy, so they sent him to the Frisia Kingdom to marry her. She tells him they should take a break, and they rest near a lake, where he tells her he loves her more than anything in this world. She doesn't know how to react, since she's never had a lover, but she decides to just accept his advances. She wants to earn his trust before he returns to his kingdom, and thinks there's no reason for her to be flustered, since he doesn't really love her. That evening, Pride hears someone knock at her window, and realizes it's Val and the kids, so she lets them in. They tell her she has turned into a fine lady, and Val notes that he has letters from the Aburan Kingdom, but he asks her about her fiancé. She notes that Leon seems like a good man, but he can tell that she doesn't want to marry him, so he offers to take her away, and promises to take care of her. She thinks Tiara could safely ascend the throne after she leaves, and knows it will be good for the kingdom, but she decides not to go with him, since she doesn't want to leave the people behind. She explains that she'll gladly join him if she loses her place there, so he tells her she can talk to him if she changes her mind, and leaves with the kids. The following day, we see Pride and Leon on a carriage, and as she shows him around the Frisia Kingdom, Stale asks him why he visits the town around his castle. He explains that it's important to know how his people live, so he visits them to stay in touch with them, and Stale is impressed by his answer, but notices that Arthur still doesn't trust him. After that, Stale talks to Arthur, who explains that he doesn't want Pride to marry Leon, since he doesn't seem like a decent man. Stale thinks he's a good person, but Arthur believes he's a jerk, and notes that he and Pride fake their smiles when they're together. The next day, Leon prepares to return to the Anemone Kingdom, and Pride tells him to keep the promise he made last night. As his carriage leaves, Stale asks her about the promise she mentioned, but Val suddenly interrupts them, and notes that the first princess of the Aburan Kingdom has a gift for her. She tells Val she needs him to do her a favor, and whispers it to his ear, but he doesn't know why she would want him to do that. After that, Stale recalls how Rosa told him she had chosen Leon as Pride's fiancé because she had spoken directly with the other princes of Anemone and thought he was the best among them. She also mentioned that Stale would start studying under his mentor Vest, so he realizes he would have less time for Pride and thinks she no longer needs him by her side, but he cries as he imagines her with Leon. Stale heads to the garden, where he sees Pride sleeping on Tiara's lap since she couldn't sleep last night. Tiara reveals that she felt lonely since her sister was busy with Leon, but Pride invited her to the garden, and she thinks Pride did it to make her happy. She suddenly wakes up and hugs Stale, telling him she missed him, so he tells her he also missed her. She sees Arthur walking around, so she greets him and asks him why he has eye bags, but he doesn't want to tell her what's been bothering him. She apologizes for not speaking to him yesterday, and knows that he forced himself to be her escort even though he wasn't feeling well, but he asks her if she's happy. She explains that she's happy since everyone's with her, but he notices that her smile is fake, so he tells her everyone's worried about her, and asks her why she's been faking her smile. She assures them she's fine, and he thinks she isn't sharing her true feelings with them, but he promises to protect her no matter what happens. After that, Pride tells her mother she had a premonition, and notes that she'll visit the Anemone Kingdom for the sake of her people. Arthur and Stale train together, but Tiara interrupts them and asks Pride what she'll do in Anemone. She assures her it's nothing dangerous, but Tiara knows she's hiding something from them, so she asks her to share it. In a flashback from the previous night, Leon prepares to get intimate with Pride, but she tells him they don't need to do it since she knows that he doesn't really love her. She praises his acting, since he was able to convince everyone he has feelings for her, but she understands how he truly feels, because she has the power of foresight. She notes that she'll keep everything a secret, but explains that he must keep a promise to her, and tells him not to leave his castle after he returns to Anemone, since he'll lose everything important to him. We return to the present, as Pride tells everyone what happened, so Stale realizes she wants to visit Anemone to make sure Leon keeps his promise. He thinks it's a good reason to go there, and notes that they can stop Leon if he tries to leave his castle, since their kingdom's reputation will suffer if he does something disgraceful. Arthur can't believe he was worried for nothing, but she apologizes for not explaining the situation to him, and notes that she's happy to have him by her side. Stale tells her to rely on them, since they want to help her solve her problems, and Tiara notes that they'll always be there for her. We see Leon in his castle, where he remembers the promise he made to Pride, and he thinks about what he truly wants. In a flashback, we learn that Leon's father told him to set an example for his younger brothers, and become a king that the people desire. So he works hard to learn everything he needs to become a good king, but wonders what kind of king the people want. His father introduces him to the people, and tells him he must become a king who meets their desires, so he does his best to make them love him. But his brother tells him his actions are narcissistic, and warns him that it could ruin his reputation. He decides to stay in the castle for a while, but he can't resist the urge to spend time with his people, so his other brother tells him to hang out with the members of high society. He follows his brother's advice, and spends time with young girls, but they fight over him, and he doesn't enjoy the experience. He rejects all of them since he can't give them what they want, but the people gossip behind his back, and spread the rumor that he's a playboy. Back in the present, Leon wants to become the prince consort of the Frisia kingdom, since he knows that it will help his people enjoy peace. But his father tells him they might need to call off his engagement, and apologizes for making things complicated for him. That evening, Leon writes in his diary, and he doesn't know what to do, since the reputation of the Anemone kingdom will suffer if his father calls off the engagement. But if he tries to keep the engagement in place, he won't be allowed to return to Anemone. His brothers give him civilian clothes, and tell him to sneak out of the castle, since they know he wants to mingle with the people. But he decides not to do it, as he recalls how Pride told him he'll lose everything if he breaks his promise. His brothers invite him to drink with them instead, and remind him that they're about to part ways, so he agrees to spend time with them. But he passes out and wakes up in a pub, and he wonders how he got there. We see a scene from the game, where Pride tortures the people who drank with Leon the previous night, since she thinks they're the reason he was late for their date. She laughs as she whips them, but he begs her to stop, and explains that they've done nothing to deserve it. She asks him if he chose to hang out with them instead of spending time with her, so he admits that it's true, but she explains that his actions amount to treason, which is a good reason for her to invade the Anemone kingdom. She explains that she'll execute the people if they're the ones at fault, but if he admits that he chose not to spend time with her, she'll burn his entire nation to the ground. He notes that it's the people's fault, and he cries as they call him a liar, but she tells him to prove his love to her by putting them out of their misery, so he goes crazy and cuts them down. Back in the present, a couple of girls approach Leon, but they don't recognize him, and they wonder how he ended up there. The men in the pub explain that he was brought there by his companions, who left money for everyone, so they've decided to celebrate by drinking all night. Leon realizes he can't move, and the girls prepare to have fun with him, but he suddenly remembers Pride's warning. He realizes he'll lose everything if the people in the pub recognize him, and the girls prepare to remove his hat, so he thinks it's all over for him. The room suddenly becomes dark, and everyone starts to panic, so Val uses the chance to rescue Leon. Val meets Pride in an alley, and tells her he saved Leon as she requested, but she can't believe he already made his move. He explains that the girls in the pub were about to remove Leon's hat, so he used his earth magic to cover the lights and took him away. He removes the rocks covering Leon, and explains that he was awake when he carried him away, but he fell asleep while they were waiting for her. Stale teleports everyone away, and a knight named Callum looks after Leon, but he explains that he doesn't know what happened to him. Val knows that Leon was drugged, and explains that he drank a mixture of narcotics and sleeping pills, which is so expensive that almost nobody uses it. Val tells everyone not to worry, since the effect will wear off if they let Leon sleep for the night, but they wonder who drugged him, and Val explains that he was already out when he left the castle. He notes that Leon was carried to the pub by two men, who left a bag of money on the counter before they left, so everyone realizes he was drugged while he was still in the castle. Pride recalls Leon's backstory in the game, and she tells everyone she was drugged by his brothers Erwin and Homer, who are jealous of him since he's the heir to the throne. We learn that in the game, they spread the rumor that he's a womanizer to ruin his reputation, and Tiara confronted them about what happened to Leon. So they told her he got drunk and asked his servants to take him to the pub, where he was found the following day. He thought it was true since he didn't remember anything, but Tiara learned that his brothers had drugged him, so she told him they had set him up. Pride can't believe Erwin and Homer would drug their brother, and she wants to make them pay, so she tells everyone she'll talk to Leon after he wakes up. The next day, Leon finally wakes up, and Callum tells him they found him at a pub, but he explains that he needs to go home immediately, since he needs to meet his fiancée. Pride tells him he doesn't need to hurry, and explains that she went there to make sure he doesn't break his promise, but he prepares to apologize since he's screwed up. She stops him and explains that it isn't his fault, since he was drugged by his brothers and carried to the pub, but he refuses to believe that his brothers would do that. She notes that they should tell his father everything, but he doesn't want to do it, so she tells him to wake up, and asks him what he loves more than anything in this world. He tells her she's the only one he loves, but she tells him to get real, since she knows that his people are the ones he truly loves. He starts to cry, and notes that he isn't fit for the throne since he's a narcissist, but she tells him it isn't true. She explains that it's normal for him to seek his people's approval, since he's fallen in love with them, and she knows that even if they don't love him back, he'll still do what's best for them since he's a good person. She recalls that in the game, her character tortured him while he stayed in Frisia as her fiancé, but he endured everything for his people, since he wanted to maintain the alliance between their kingdoms. She wants him to embrace his desires, so that his heart will guide him to the right path, and he hugs her as he admits that he doesn't want to leave his country. He explains that he has high hopes for the future, and tells her about the good experience he had with his people, which makes him think they believe in him, even though he has a bad reputation. She's glad he finally told her the truth, and notes that she'll help him get everything back, since she wants him to be happy. After that, Leon wants to meet the person who saved him, so Val comes out of the closet, but he's forced to bow because of the fealty contract. Pride realizes she only allowed him to be insolent when he saved Leon, who promises to repay him, but he explains that he only did it for her. She allows him to be insolent, so he gets up and tells Leon he wouldn't have saved him if it weren't for her orders. But Leon still thanks him anyway, and Arthur knows he isn't faking his smile. They meet the King Gregor, and Pride promises to explain everything to him, but notes that she wants to meet Erwin and Homer first. He doesn't want to show his sons to her, but she explains that she's asking as the Queen's proxy, so he realizes he needs to fulfill her request. Homer and Erwin pretend they're happy to see Leon, but he tells their father everything that happened, and notes that they were the ones who drugged him. They explain that it isn't true, telling him he doesn't have proof that they drugged him, and they accuse the Frisia kingdom of trying to frame them. But Gregor tells them to stop, and reminds them that he told them to reflect on their mistakes. He apologizes for their rudeness, and orders his guards to arrest them, but Erwin tells him no one will inherit the throne if he gets rid of them. Pride reveals that she had a premonition that Gregor would break off her engagement with Leon so that he could inherit the throne, and Gregor prepares to apologize to her. But she stops him and tells him she'll use her powers as the queen's proxy to break off her engagement. Erwin wonders why she would do that, so she explains that a marriage between their kingdoms isn't necessary to maintain their alliance, since Leon is already her sworn ally. She tells him his kingdom needs him, since it will fall into ruin in his absence, and he promises to make their alliance unbreakable. Erwin explains that he doesn't have what it takes to be king, and notes that the kingdom will fall apart under his rule, but she tells him to be silent. She explains that Leon will be a good king, since he loves his people more than anything in this world, and she reveals that in her vision, everyone suffered when Erwin and Homer took the throne. She recalls that in the game, they begged Leon to return to the Anemone Kingdom, since they didn't know what to do, but he became angry and chased them away, so Tiara cheered him up. He was forced into the marriage alliance because his brothers ruined his reputation, but their father learned about it, so he declared Leon the heir to the throne, and told Erwin and Homer to reflect on their mistakes. But they didn't want their brother to take the throne, so they decided to drug him and throw him at the pub. Pride tells the brothers she knows everything because of her premonition, and threatens to punish them if they harm Leon, telling them they're worthless since they refuse to acknowledge royal pride and duty. She knows that in the game, Leon became mentally ill after her character forced him to execute his people, who were handed over by his brothers as criminals. After they got him out of the way, the king passed away from a sudden illness, and they immediately took the throne. But they realized they needed Leon, so they kidnapped Tiara to force him to come back. Pride asks the brothers what they plan to do after they became king, and notes that if the people aren't the first thing that comes into their minds, they have no right to speak against Leon. The guards take them away, and she apologizes to Gregor for overstepping, but Leon hugs her and thanks her for everything she's done for him. She tells him to embrace his feelings, and she knows he's in a lot of pain, since he pretended to love her more than his people. She's glad she was able to return him to his kingdom, and she wants him to promise her he will serve his people, so he promises to do his best. After that, Pride asks Gregor to greet her companions, and Leon joins him as he shakes their hands. Arthur's healing power activates as Gregor touches him, and Pride thinks he won't die anytime soon, since Arthur has cured his illness. As Pride prepares to leave, Leon tells her she can be casual with him since they're sworn allies, and she looks forward to seeing him again. He takes her to her carriage, and as she prepares to board it, he tells her he'll never forget what she did for him, so he promises to help Frisia in times of need. He notes that he'll wait for her to visit him again, but he suddenly kisses her on the cheek and tells her she's his first love. She falls as she enters her carriage, and she can't believe she's his first love, since her character made him suffer in the game. Stale wonders where he kissed her, since he's worried it could cause her emotional harm, so Arthur notes that he just kissed her cheek. Gregor tells Leon they could have solved everything without ending the engagement if Pride weren't the heir to her throne, but Leon explains that it's okay, since he can see her whenever he wants. He thinks she's a great person, and he doesn't know when he fell in love with her, but he's happy she's his first love. We return to Pride, and we see that she still can't get over what happened, but Stale is just glad her engagement is over. Arthur asks him what kind of man he wants her to end up with, so he explains that he wants him to be perfect, and Arthur feels the same way. After that, Pride doesn't understand Leon's actions, since she's never had a lover before, so Callum explains that he's simply expressed his love for her, even though he knows they can't be together. Callum notes that he reciprocated her feelings, since she showered him with kindness and compassion, and she thanks Callum for helping her understand Leon's feelings. They ride the carriage again, but someone suddenly knocks at their window, and they realize it's Val and the kids. He thinks they're pathetic, since they keep talking about what happened, and he asks Pride if she's in love with Leon, so she explains that they're just friends. He tells the others it shouldn't matter what she does with Leon since they're engaged, but they explain that the engagement was called off, so she's no longer tied down to anyone. She tells Val not to tell anyone about it, because it hasn't been made public yet, and he uses his earth magic to help them travel faster. They return to the castle, and Pride reports everything to her mother, who can't believe Leon's brothers drugged him. She starts to cry, since she knows she caused trouble for Pride, and she thinks she isn't a good mother to her. Pride wonders why she never expected Rosa to do anything motherly for her, and realizes that she's still human even though she's the queen. So Pride tells Rosa she loves her, and assures her she's a good mother, since she did her best to raise her daughters. She hugs Pride, but reveals that she had a premonition over 10 years ago, and saw her using her powers to torture weak people for fun. She explains that she thought Pride would turn into a monster, so she never treated her well when she was little, but it all changed when she turned 8, because Rosa stopped seeing that future. She's glad her daughter grew into a wonderful princess, but Pride becomes terrified as she thinks about how evil her character was in the game. She tells her mother it's okay, and notes that there's no need to rush things, since they still have plenty of time. After that, Stale asks Pride about her mother's premonition, and wonders why she was so angry at Leon's brothers. He wants her to share her feelings with him, and promises not to judge her, so she explains that she couldn't forgive them. She reveals that she saw the future, so she knows they would cause a lot of suffering if she didn't make them pay, and she starts to cry, as she notes that she can see herself when she looks at them. Stale hugs her, and assures her she won't end up like them, since she's a good person at heart. He tells her he'll always stay by her side, and notes that he'll risk his life for her if the worst comes to pass, but their noses touch as she turns her head. He becomes flustered, and realizes he just had a moment with her, but she's glad she opened up to him, and notes that she'll rely on him more often. She reveals that Arthur told her she can count on him since he's strong and smart, and she tells him she loves him, so he notes that the feeling is mutual. Stale tells Rosa he wants to start his training with Vess, but she explains that it's too early for that, and reminds him that Pride is no longer engaged. He explains that he wants to be ready for when her fiancé is chosen, and notes that he also wants to learn the duties of a prince consort, so that he can support her all the way. Rosa thinks he can't handle all the work, but Gilbert knows that he's extremely smart, and volunteers to teach him as much as he can. After that, Albert can't believe Gilbert helped Stale, but he notes that he appreciates it, and explains that if Stale can handle the prince consort's duties, Pride can just marry whoever she wants. They discuss that she might end up with Val, and Gilbert thinks she shouldn't marry a criminal, but notes that they can't do anything if she elopes with him. We see Alan as he asks Arthur what it's like to be Pride's most trusted knight, and thinks it has its perks, since he gets to stand outside her room all night. Alan wonders if he has tried anything with her, so he explains that he would never do that, but admits that his position has its perks. In a flashback from the previous night, we see Arthur outside Pride's room, and she notes that she can't sleep, so he tells her not to worry since her followers will never leave her. He tells her about the knights who are loyal to her, and thinks they can keep her safe, since he knows how capable they are. He adds that Stale is a skilled fighter, and will continue to get stronger thanks to his training, so he's glad that Stale is always by her side. He notes that he's also loyal to her, and asks her to open the door, since he wants to hold her hand. He explains that he's been training hard to improve his sword skills, because he wants to protect her when she's in danger, and he tells her she's an amazing person. She closes her eyes and tells him she loves him, so he becomes flustered, but she suddenly falls asleep. Back in the present, Arthur tells his friends what happened, but they realize he's already drunk, and Stale suddenly joins them. He sits beside Arthur, who tells everyone how amazing Stale is, but Stale tells him he's drunk and throws him out. He asks the other knights what they think about Arthur, so they explain that they like him and recognize his talents. But he suddenly returns to the room, and notes that he can't remember what happened. Stale is glad he was able to sober up quickly, and tells him he'll train to serve as the next regent, so he won't be able to stay with Pride. Arthur suddenly hits him, and notes that he already knew it would happen, but he wonders why Stale didn't tell him sooner. He explains that he wanted to be the first person to tell him, and prepares to throw Arthur, as he notes that he didn't know what to do when the idea first came up, since he thought Arthur would become upset. He explains that he can see the bigger picture, and he's just angry because Stale kept his feelings bottled up, asking him what he plans to do before he leaves Pride. He trips Arthur and pushes him down, and he tells the other knights to become Pride's personal guard while he's gone, explaining that he believes in them since they're Arthur's friends. They all kneel before him and promise to protect Pride, so Stale thanks them and notes that it's time to celebrate. He asks Arthur if he thinks they can protect Pride, so he explains that he's confident in their abilities, but notes that Stale is still his best partner. We see Leon as he gets liquor for Val, and he prepares to drink with him, since he wants them to be friends. He asks Val what he thinks of the Anemone Kingdom, but Val thinks he's out of his mind, since he's asking for a lowlife's opinion. Leon explains that he wants to befriend people who have different perspectives, so that he can understand everything from their point of view, and he wonders if commoners enjoy talking about romance while they're having a drink. Val tells him to head to the pub if he wants to find out, but he explains that he would never do that, since he values his integrity. He tells Val he can be casual with him, but he notes that he'll never consider Leon his friend if he can't outdrink him, so Leon challenges him to a drinking match. Pride shows everyone the original dishes she came up with, and notes that her chefs made them, but Tiara helped her make the desserts. We learn that she used to cook in her previous life, but her character has terrible cooking skills, so she couldn't make anything. But she gave Tiara the recipe, and she easily nailed it since she's the main character. Everyone enjoys the food, but Tiara tells Pride to feed Arthur and Stale, so she takes a cookie and feeds Arthur, who accidentally bites her hand. He immediately apologizes for what happened, but she thanks him for always looking after her, and she also feeds Stale. But she notices dirt on his lips, so she wipes it off and thanks him for always listening to her. Val gobbles up the food, but Pride notices he keeps eating the same thing, so she gives him a rice ball. He eats one of them and tells her it's not bad, and asks her to try the food he's been eating, so she takes a bite and tells him it's delicious. She's glad everyone's having fun, because they've been stressed ever since they learned about her engagement, but she knows someone else who could cause trouble for them in the future. Pride learns that Arthur has become the vice captain of the 8th Squadron, so she congratulates him, and he becomes flustered as she hugs him. After that, Arthur thinks about how cute Pride is, but the captain of the 8th Squad, Harrison, suddenly attacks him. Arthur deflects his knives, and their fight ends in a draw, but he tells Arthur to finish all of his duties. As he walks away, Arthur thinks about how scary he is, and he knows that Harrison was just testing him, because strength is the only thing that matters in their squad. Leon tells Pride that the second prince of the Circes Kingdom suddenly reached out to him and told him he wanted to improve their relationship. Leon notes that he also wanted to talk to her, so she thinks about the United Hanzo Kingdom, which is made up of 2 smaller nations with a shared border. She wonders why one of their princes reached out to Leon, since Frisia and Anemone tried to befriend them, but never received a response. Leon notes that the prince will come to Frisia in 5 days, and reveals that he was told to send the message, so Pride wonders why the prince didn't send a messenger instead. Arthur and Stale have a sparring match, but Stale tells Arthur he still has a long way to go, even though he's now the vice captain of the 8th Squad. Stale wants him to become the Knight Commander, but he explains that it's hard to reach that position, and notes that he'll just do what he can to protect Pride. Stale teleports to dodge his attacks, so Arthur performs a spinning move, and Stale is forced to block it, leading to him being disarmed. A servant tells Pride a carriage has arrived from Circes, so she joins her family to greet their guest, and she recognizes him as a love interest in the game. He introduces himself as Prince Cedric, and tells Rosa to consider an alliance with Circes in the United Hanzo Kingdom, but Pride is surprised since she expected him to say more. Tiara thinks Cedric's request is strange, since he asked their mother to travel to Circes to form an alliance, and we learn that even Rosa finds him suspicious. Pride knows he's nothing like Leon, since he's a narcissist who loves to flirt with women, and he has a fatal flaw that puts everyone off. He suddenly visits her, and asks her to show him around the castle, and he even starts to flirt with her. Tiara decides to go with them, and as they start to give him a tour, he tells them they're both beautiful, and starts to talk about his relationship with his brother. Pride recalls that his greatest flaw is that he knows nothing about the ways of the world, which is why he behaves like an idiot, but we learn that his childish innocence is what made him popular with the players. He suddenly smells Pride's hair, and he explains that he can't help it because her beauty is irresistible. He then kisses her hand, so she becomes flustered, and recalls that he did the same thing to Tiara in the game. Callum and Arthur stop him, so he apologizes for getting carried away, but admits that he has become a prisoner of her beauty. She realizes he's really into her, and he goes to kiss her, but Arthur suddenly interrupts him. Callum tells him to take a break, so he starts to walk away, and Pride thinks she knows the reason she's his target. She receives a package from Leon, and she prepares to open it, but Stale asks her about Cedric, so she tells him everything that happened. She thinks it isn't a big deal, but he becomes upset, and tells her he needs to go. We see Gilbert walking around the castle, but he sees Cedric talking to Stale, who tells him the culture in Frisia is different. He boasts about how amazing the kingdom is, but tells Cedric not to worry since they'll never resort to violence. But he explains that excessive touching is unacceptable and stealing a kiss is considered a serious crime, which is punishable by death. Gilbert realizes he wants to make Cedric pay for making his move on Pride, so he tells Stale to stop and reprimands him for lecturing Cedric. But he notes that abuses against royalty are obvious taboos, so there's no need to explain them to foreign royals. Stale realizes Gilbert is on his side, so he apologizes for lecturing Cedric, but as they talk in front of him, they discuss how unacceptable his behavior is, so he realizes they're ganging up on him. Pride and Tiara prepare to cook the ingredients Leon sent them, and they decide to make Arthur's favorite dish. Pride thinks they should also bake cookies for Stale, and they get to work, but she knows she has terrible cooking skills, so she relies on Tiara's heroin cheat codes to get the job done. After they finish cooking, Pride realizes they still have a lot of time, and they want to make more cookies for everyone, so they leave to get more ingredients. They make their way back to the kitchen, but suddenly hear a commotion, and they realize Cedric is eating the food they made. Pride tells him they didn't make the food for him, and she realizes he ate everything. Stale arrives and tells her he's done with his training, but she's angry since Cedric ate all of his cookies, and she tells him she hates him. The following day, we see Pride in the garden, and Tiara notices she's exhausted, so she tells her to rest on her lap. Pride later wakes up, and she realizes Tiara is asleep, so she leaves quietly, but she's surprised to see a group of knights in the garden. She wonders what they're doing there, but she sees Cedric hiding behind the bushes, and he apologizes for what happened the other day. He hopes she can see him as a friend, and consider an alliance with the United Hanzo Kingdom, but she knows he just wants to win her over, so that Frisia will accept his proposal. He wonders how she knows his plan, but she tells him it was dumb, and he suddenly grabs her and tells her she has no idea how desperate he is. He almost gets hit by throwing knives, so he becomes distracted, and she uses the chance to kick him away, and Arthur suddenly comes to help. The knights prepare to arrest Cedric, but Pride explains that they just had a small argument and tells him to return to his room. The knights escort him back, and Pride thanks Arthur for saving her with his throwing knives, but he reveals that he wasn't the one who threw them. She wonders if a trespasser saved her, but his friends think someone from the 8th Squadron must have done it, and Tiara learns about what happened, so she apologizes for falling asleep. After that, Pride talks to Val and tells him to send letters for her, but he asks her what happened to the ingredients he delivered. She reveals that Cedric ate all of them, so Val teases her, because he thinks she likes him, but she notes that she hates him. Val can't believe it, since he never thought she would hate anyone, and Stale suddenly knocks at the door. We cut to Gilbert, who tells Cedric the alliance negotiations are on hold, because they think there's something he isn't telling them. Gilbert wants him to explain his situation, but he refuses to do it and prepares to leave. Pride suddenly joins them, and notes that Stale told her about the situation, but she tells Cedric he can't leave yet, because she wants him to explain everything to her mother. He tells her he can't speak about his country without the king's permission, but she knows the king doesn't even know he's there to negotiate, and he wonders how she found out. She explains that it isn't important, but notes that she wants him to talk to her mother, since she knows he's running out of time. She explains that the negotiation fell apart because Frisia doesn't trust him, and she reveals that everyone thinks his country wants to invade their kingdom. He notes that his country would never do that, so she tells him to stop hiding secrets from them and reminds him that he came to Frisia to protect something important. She tells him his plan only made things worse and explains that he can't protect what's important to him if he doesn't let go of his ego. They head to the throne room, where Pride tells her mother that Cedric wants to discuss something important with her, and he prepares to tell her the truth. In a flashback, we see Cedric's brother Lance, who scolds Cedric for skipping class, but he explains that he doesn't need to learn anything since his pretty face will take him anywhere he needs to go. Lance tells him to get down the tree, but he sees the king of the Kinesis Kingdom Johan, who helps him escape, and tells him not to cause trouble for Lance. He explains that Lance is still adjusting to his duties as king, but Cedric doesn't care, and explains that he doesn't need to study, because his face is the only thing he needs to succeed in life. We learn that Johan and Lance were the ones who raised him, so he loves them with all his heart, but Lance bursts into the room and starts to scold him. Johan tells him he needs to fix his childish way of thinking, and wants him to swear before God that he will study, but he refuses to do it since he thinks he's more handsome than God. One day, a messenger from the Copolandi kingdom visits them and threatens to invade the Kinesis kingdom if they don't surrender. He gives them a grace period of 1 month and explains that resistance is futile since they're no match for Copolandi and its allies. Yolan thinks about dissolving their alliance with Circe since Copolandi might target them next, but Lance tells him they'll fight together until the end. Cedric knows the United Hanzo Kingdom doesn't stand a chance against Copolandi, and he thinks Frisia can help them since they have people with special abilities. He knows a queen rules them, so he thinks he can use his charm to make the royals fall in love with him and convince them to help his country. Back in the present, Cedric realizes his plan failed, so he apologizes for hiding the truth, and Rosa tells him to explain his situation. He suddenly bows before her and begs her to help the United Hanzo Kingdom since Copolandi is threatening to invade them. He explains that they only have 2 weeks before the grace period ends, and he knows their army is no match for Copolandi, so Frisia is their only hope. Pride tells her mother he's telling the truth since she had a premonition that Kinesis would be invaded, so Rosa decides to help him and agrees to form an alliance after she confirms the situation. After that, Cedric apologizes for causing trouble for everyone and promises to stop being rude, but he wonders if they will forgive him. Stale explains that he's done unforgivable things to Pride, but she still helped him talk to her mother, so he shouldn't forget how merciful she is. Cedric receives a letter, which makes him want to return to Hanzo immediately, and Pride learns about it, so she decides to talk to him. He begs her to let him return to Hanzo, but she tells him the alliance will fall apart if he leaves, and tells him to explain what's happening. She promises to do what she can to help him, so he shows her the letter, which mentions that Copolandi is shortening their grace period by 9 days. It also mentions that Lance has gone insane, and Kinesis called off its alliance with Circe since it has completely given up. Cedric notes that Copolandi will invade in 6 days, and he thinks he can't make it back in time, so he starts to cry. He believes his brother lost it since he left without permission, but Pride thinks it isn't the case, because he isn't the reason why Lance went mad in the game. But she knows that Copolandi wasn't supposed to invade early, so she has no idea what will happen. She recalls that when Copolandi threatened to invade in the game, Yolan wanted to surrender, but the brothers persuaded him to fight, and Cedric made his way to Frisia. He asked for Pride's help, and she immediately agreed to ally with him, but when her troops reached the United Hanzo Kingdom, she betrayed them and attacked Kinesis. We learned that she was working with Copolandi all along, so she helped them invade Kinesis, and Lance went crazy when he learned about the betrayal. Cedric falls into despair, and he's forced to take the throne since his brother can't carry out his duties, but Pride takes advantage of his emotional weakness and manipulates him. Pride tells Cedric to tell her mother everything again, but he thinks it's no use, and explains that his brother can't sign the treaty since he's mentally ill. He starts to lose hope, so Pride pushes him down and tells him to fight until the very end. Cedric explains the situation to Rosa, who realizes they need to act fast, but she explains that Frisia needs to confirm the details before they make their move. She tells him he needs to wait another day, and explains that their alliance will be forged with him, since his brother has gone insane. But she reveals that they received a letter from the Raja Empire, which will send representatives to visit them on the same day as the invasion. She explains that she can't send her troops, since she needs to stay to negotiate with the Empire, but Pride offers to lead the knights in her place. She promises to stop the invasion while her mother deals with the Raja Empire, but Rosa tells her it's dangerous, so she explains that she needs to experience battle as the future queen. Rosa allows her to do it, and notes that Stale will join her, but Cedric still wants to go home immediately, so she tells him to wait until the next day. She explains that she still can't reveal everything, since their negotiation isn't done yet, but she notes that Frisia will support the United Hanzo Kingdom after they form an alliance. Pride asks Roderick to give her half of his knights, but he explains that it's hard to choose the ones who will go with her, so she realizes he's worried about leading his elite knights under her care. She apologizes for the hassle, but he tells her it's okay, and promises to give her half of his men. He takes her to his knights, and tells them they'll fight by her side, since they've received a royal order to defend the United Hanzo Kingdom. Pride tells them to help her defend their allies, and they all cheer for her, so she realizes they all support her. Cedric wonders why they love her, so Stale explains it's because she's a royal with integrity, and notes that her brilliance makes her the treasure of Frisia. Clark tells Callum and Arthur to take care of her, and Arthur tells her she did great, but she notes that she needs to ask for a favor, and whispers something in his ear. At night, Stell and Arthur talk about how forgiving Pride is, since she helped Cedric after everything he did to her. Arthur notes that he can't forgive him, but Stell thinks he doesn't have to, since he'll never do anything to harm Pride. Stell notes that Arthur has a good heart, but explains that he's different because he knows where to draw the line. Arthur tells him he's the kind of advisor Pride needs, and thinks he isn't as valuable, since there are other knights just like him. Stell tells him he doesn't get it, and notes that she relies on him to protect her since he's special to her. Stell mentions that he needs to go, and he teleports to his room. He recalls how Pride asked for a secret favor from him, so he becomes flustered, and thinks about how he'll do anything for her. Cedric wonders how his enemies found out what he's up to, and thinks everything is his fault, but Pride knocks at his door, and tells him it isn't true. She explains that she knows because of her power of premonition, and notes that she even saw Kinesis being invaded, but she tells him they can change the future. She assures him he did the right thing, and tells him everything will be okay, since they'll reach his kingdom in time. He starts to cry, and wonders why his country is being targeted, but she tells him not to worry, since she'll do everything she can to protect them. We see a scene from the game, where Pride tells Cedric she has decided to invade Cersus, and she tells him they're free to fight back, but they're no match for Frisia since their military is weak. She promises to spare them if he agrees to her conditions, and tells him to win Tiara's heart before he gets rid of her. But he wonders why she wants him to do that, so she explains that she wants to see the look on Tiara's face after she's betrayed by the man she loves. Pride threatens to invade Cersus if he refuses, so he agrees to do it, and she notes that she can also help them reclaim their neighboring countries, but he needs to lick her shoes in exchange. He's shocked by her offer, but he reluctantly walks toward her, and decides to do it for his country. Pride suddenly wakes up, and her maid wonders if she's okay, since she was groaning in her sleep, so she explains that she just had a nightmare. After that, Rosa tells Cedric that Vest and his team have finished their investigation, and they have confirmed that Cedric was telling the truth, so she agrees to forge an alliance with him. She adds that there's good news for Pride, and Stale reveals that Leon reached out to them and promised to send supplies for the battle. Rosa promises to support the United Hanzo Kingdom, and Gilbert reveals that they've arrested 7 spies from Copolandi who were sent to sabotage Frisia. Rosa thinks it's enough reason for them to go to war, and tells Pride she's free to do as she sees fit, so she decides to form an advanced guard of knights and head to the battlefield. She notes that they'll reach Cersus in 3 days, but Tiara asks for permission to go with her, since she wants to see what war is like. Pride can't resist her cuteness, so she allows her to join, but tells her to stay out of harm's way. Stale teleports Cedric and the knights to Cersus, and Cedric is surprised that they got there in an instant, so Stale reveals that he used his ability, which allows him to go anywhere as long as he knows the coordinates. He tells Cedric to keep it a secret, and they walk around the city, but the civilians think they're from Copolandi, so they start to panic. Cedric tells them not to worry, and explains that the knights are on their side, so they realize he arrived with reinforcements. He heads to the castle, where he asks his friends about Lance, and they tell him he still hasn't recovered, so Cedric decides to act as his representative. We return to Frisia, where Pride tells Rosa she's worried about Tiara, since she's too young to experience war. But Tiara notes that she's already 15, and reminds Pride she fought battles at a much younger age. Stale joins them, and tells Rosa it's time, so he teleports her to Cersus, where she finalizes her alliance with Cedric. She notes that her knights will help defend his kingdom, so he thanks her for her support, and Stale teleports her back to Frisia. Everyone's amazed by his ability, and he also sends the knights back, but before he does the same for Callum, he tells Cedric he wants to see how Lance is doing. Pride helps Arthur wear a disguise, and Stale takes them to Cedric, who asks about Arthur, but Stale explains that they can't reveal his identity. Lance screams that he needs to protect the country, so they realize he really is insane, and Arthur uses his healing power to cure him. He immediately calms down, and tells Cedric he's glad to see him again, but he asks about his companions, so Stale reveals they're from Frisia. Lance realizes Cedric asked for their help, but he doesn't know what day it is, so Stale explains the situation to him. Lance hits Cedric in the head and calls him an idiot, since he left the country without permission, and Lance apologizes for all the trouble his brother caused. He doesn't remember how he lost his mind, and Pride finds the situation strange, since the timing of his illness is different from the game. He notes that he'll talk to Johan, since he wants to maintain their alliance with Kinesis, and Cedric thanks Pride for her help. She explains that they still have 4 days until our knights arrive, and notes that she has an assignment for him. So he promises to do it no matter how difficult it is, but she actually tells him to study. She explains that he must learn defensive tactics in war, since they will help in the coming battle, and she tells him to always obey his brother. Stale notes that they need to head out, and tells the brothers to keep everything that happened a secret, but Cedric tells them to wait, and thanks Arthur for healing Lance. He gives him his ring as a thank you gift, and Pride notes that they'll return after 4 days, to protect the United Hanzo Kingdom. They return to Frisia, and Stale is glad they were able to cure Lance, but Arthur wonders what he should do with Cedric's ring. Stale tells him to keep it, but he thinks he doesn't deserve it, so Stale tells him to join the Knights of Circes instead. Pride tells him he can't do it since he's her knight, so he becomes flustered, and notes that he just got a reward more valuable than the ring. He says goodbye to her, and Stale teleports him away, and he notes that he also needs to leave. She suddenly hugs him and tells him to indulge her, since she knows she has a challenging task ahead of her. He wonders why she chose him to cheer her up, so she explains that it's because he already saw her at her worst, and he's happy that she relies on him. The next day, everyone sees Pride wearing the knight's uniform, and they all think she looks amazing. She leaves with her knights, and as they reach the border, they assemble their magical motorcycles, which they use to pull the carriages. Tiara is amazed by how fast they're going, and Pride notes that with their advanced technology, they will reach the United Hanzo Kingdom in 3 days. At night, everyone sets up camp, and Pride realizes Tiara can't sleep, so she tells her about the story of Cinderella. Tiara wonders what would happen if the men they know were the prince in the story, so Pride notes that if it were Stale, he would search the entire country for Cinderella and punish her family for treating her badly. Arthur would chase her carriage to the ends of the earth, and she wouldn't forget the image of him running after her, while Gilbert would immediately look for her and make his move. Val isn't the type that would look for her, but if his subordinates find her, he would use his powers to take her away. Leon would keep hosting parties until she appeared, and Pride also mentions what the knights would do if they were the prince, but she realizes Tiara has already fallen asleep. Pride and her knights arrive at the gate of Circes, and she announces that they'll fight for the United Hanzo Kingdom. Cedric opens the gate, but Pride notices he isn't happy to see them, so she realizes something's wrong. Pride appears before Lance, and we learn that after he was cured, he left for Kinesis with his brother, but they saw a huge wall at the border. One of their knights climbed it, but the guards of Kinesis opened fire, and explained that they were ordered not to let anyone get past the wall. So Lance decided to send notes instead of crossing the border, but he didn't receive a response. Pride finds it strange that Kinesis built the wall, because in the game, the wall only existed after her character invaded the country. She asks Lance about his plan, so he explains that he won't abandon Kinesis, since they have done a lot for his kingdom. Pride notes that she'll head to Kinesis immediately, and try to negotiate with Johan, so Lance tells her it's dangerous, but she explains that her elite knights will keep her safe. Roderick promises to complete their mission without casualties, and Cedric decides to go with them, since he wants to talk to Johan. We see Johan in his castle, where he watches countless people praying around a monument, and he thinks Kinesis will be destroyed because of his foolishness, but Pride notes that she won't let it happen. She appears with her knights, and Johan wonders why Cedric is with them, so he explains that he allied with Frisia. He reveals that her knights helped him get past the wall, and notes that Lance has recovered, so Johan becomes emotional. But he tells Cedric to go home immediately, since he doesn't want to drag Circes into the war. Cedric tells him they want to fight for Kinesis, but Johan explains that Circes will be destroyed if they lose the war, and notes that Kinesis should suffer alone, since they're Copalandi's only target. Cedric reminds him that they're both in the United Hanzo Kingdom, and they promise to protect each other, so he won't leave him to fight the enemy alone. He manages to convince Johan to accept help from his allies, and he notes that he trusts Cedric, so he orders his chancellor to prepare a blood oath. But he tells Cedric to be ready for the worst, since it will all be in vain if he can't get his people's approval. Johan appears before his people, telling them he has decided to withdraw their surrender to Copalandi and fight off the invasion instead. He tells them about their alliance with Frisia, and prepares to take a blood oath, but his people think Frisia can't be trusted, since they might abandon the country when things go south. Pride joins him and tells his people to burn him alive if he doesn't fulfill his oath, so they become angry and call her a devil. But she notes that if they lose the war, they can burn her as well. She makes a blood oath with Johann, as she promises to protect the United Hanzo Kingdom to the very end, and notes that Frisia will never lose, because they take pride in their military strength. Johann promises to do his best for the future of his people, and they realize they have a chance with Frisia and Circe on their side, so they decide not to give up. After that, Stale asks Pride why she acted recklessly, and notes that she just put her life on the line for the United Hanzo Kingdom, so she explains that it was the only way to earn the people's trust. Arthur is determined to win the war, since he doesn't want her to be burned alive, and Stale notes that he'll tell Roderick about her oath, so she realizes she made them angry. Johann wonders why she's risking her life for Kinesis, so she explains that she wants to protect his citizens, and we learn that she doesn't value her life, since she's supposed to be the villain in the story. She notes that Cedric was the one who reached out to Frisia, so Johann thanks him and apologizes for all the trouble he caused. Pride returns to Circe, where she tells Lance what happened, and they discuss their strategy for the upcoming battle. We learn that Roderick is angry, since Stale told him about the blood oath, and he scolded Pride for putting her life on the line, because they aren't even sure if they'll win the war. She apologized for being reckless, and explained that it was the only way to gain the people's trust, but Stale told her she shouldn't put her life at risk, since she's the future queen of Frisia. At night, Tiara tells everyone to be careful during the battle, and Cedric asks Pride how he can be as strong as her. She explains that she's just doing what she can to keep everyone safe, and tells him not to hold back, but she knows he still can't understand what's happening. She doesn't want him to lose Johann and his brother as he did in the game, so she hopes he learns to take a stand before a tragedy happens. As she leaves with her knights, he thinks about how amazing she is, and wonders what she meant when she told him not to hold back. The knights gather on the battlefield, and we see that everyone's ready for war, but Stale tells Pride he wants to talk to her before the battle. He thinks he's the weakest person in the room, since he isn't even a knight, but he kneels before her, and promises to give his life to protect her. She realizes her knights are ready to die for her as well, but Lance wonders why Johann and Cedric are also kneeling before her. So Johann explains that he wants to honor her, since she's putting her life on the line for his country. Lance tells her he can't kneel since he's the king of Circe, but promises to repay her if they win the war, and she assures them that they will all make it, as long as they stick together. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.